Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. And here we go. Welcome to Me and Paranormal You. This is your buddy, Ryan Singer. I believe I'm recording, and I believe everything is kosher. Now, I've got Matthew Jackson joining the program yet again. I don't know how many times you've been on the show, but it's still not enough. We've got a lot of interesting things to discuss and some updates potentially as well. How you doing today, buddy?
Man, you know what? I'm doing great. And now that you mention it, I have been on a few times. I think this might be 4 or 5.
At least, right?
Yeah, I think so. But every time, my pleasure.
Wait,
Hands
what's
down,
happening
my
over here
pleasure.
on the video screen?
Well,
It just zoomed in and out.
I did?
It warped. Yes, you zoomed out. I
Did
mean,
I really?
I'm gonna try to get this. Sometimes I don't have time to get the video edited and all that kind of for the.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you zoomed out and then you zoomed in. It was very distinctive. You'll be able to see it on the recording. Anyway,
Yeah,
okay,
it didn't look different on my end, but yeah,
that's
I'll try to keep
strange.
my gestures down. I'm gonna sit
Well,
on my
no,
hands.
do you have some kind of weird filter on right now?
I don't believe so. No, because I hit no filter.
That was
So
weird. That was weird.
yeah,
Okay. Chalk it up, right? So,
yeah.
anyway, you just wrapped up a big weekend, didn't you?
Yeah, I wrapped up a huge weekend. It was definitely the weirdest weekend I'd had since the last time we hung out. So it'd been a minute since I had such a fun weekend.
Yeah. So you were you were integrally. What? That's a who wrote that word? You were an integral part of the Crump Paracon, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, the I'm trying to think what the Ghost Brothers were there. There was Jeff
yeah,
Bodard, our buddy, was there, right?
yeah. Jeff is there. Yeah, and then also the Viewpoint event with your buddy Beth that owns the bookstore.
We
So I
love
was a
Beth.
part of
We
two
love
two
Beth.
events. Yeah, yeah. We do love Beth.
Um, two locations now, and I just watched a haunting viewpoint, which is it's a we'll link that. It's on the Paraholics side. I thought that was going away, but are you keeping it alive? Like what was I mistaken here? Um, clear that up for me.
Yeah. Well, the more I get further and further into ITC, the more my thoughts have evolved. And, I feel like I'm not quite a ghost hunter like I was back when I first started kind of going down this road. And to me, Paraholics was all about haunted locations and ghost stories and trying to make connections between the paranormal activity and the locations history and so forth. And as things have evolved and I've become weirder and stranger in my development, I was feeling more disconnected away from the Paraholics brand. But then I keep getting asked to be a part of these different events that don't quite seem to fit the mold for Obscuravox and my ITC specific, things that I'm trying to develop. And so when the Viewpoint opportunity fell in my lap, it was a Paraholics thing. It would just that's where it had to land. And even though I got to use Prism and I got to be a part of that, it was still a paranormal investigation. It was still a ghost hunt, and I just got to break out some rad ITC stuff, and it all came together. Well, as you saw in the video, I think it really all worked well.
Okay, yeah, no, it did, and it's a really it's a cool story, and it is the debut of Prism footage on at least on Paraholics,
Yeah.
and Prism has been demonstrated live, but is this? I mean, is it the very first online footage of Prism? I'm trying to remember exactly.
Besides a little bit of like snippets of some audio, like we did from when you helped me with the Alton event for the Haunted America conference, this is the first like real debut of Prism in action. Because we've, of course, you and we've shot tons of footage in the Florida investigation. We had the Alton event but none of the Florida stuff has ever been released. So this wound up being a surprise, not only for myself, but also Joshua Sean, when we never anticipated, Prism ever being a part of Paraholics. And then it just kind of happened without us really even thinking about it. And he was like, "Oh man, Prism's on Paraholics." So he thought it was super cool, and we were both blown away with the results and how it all turned out. So it was cool, man. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad it landed there first.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that it did, in
Yeah,
the big scope of things. And what's interesting too is for people listening who have, especially, the consistent listeners or the, people who really follow the program. I love calling it a program. I'm not sure why I do, but I think, following the program tonight, we'll be right back with a short message from our sponsor, General Electric. I mean, it feels like
that's all
it's
my
like six
grandparents
seasons.
always called TV shows. What program do you want to watch tonight?
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it.
Um, it makes sense that it landed there. And people will get a chance to really hear it in action, at least in
Yeah,
a little bit, in longer snippets and you can see why it kind of really will blow you away. And you and I have obviously have ongoing conversations happening outside of being recorded, and via text or whatever. Matt loves using as many different messaging apps as humanly possible, to which it's actually making a lot of sense now, because in my mind I'm like, oh, I have my website and I just put everything on there, comedy, paranormal, blah 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 blah, right? But in you're very good. It's very important to you to be, compartmentalizing or organizing your footage, like when you're talking about Prism footage, which is this brilliant ITC device that you've been working with Joshua Sean on. And it's like, okay, so that has to be on Paraholics because it can't be on, etc. But for me, I'm just like, throw it all on the wall and see, and people will figure it out. But so it makes sense why you've got, Facebook Messenger, you've got Instagram direct message, you've got text message. It's really, anyway, it's funny. So what I'm interested in maybe getting into today, at least for a little bit, is these. And I don't even know if I'm supposed to be talking about this, but we're talking about there's a duality in Prism's communication,
there seems to
and
be.
it's difficult to wrap my brain around. But it is, it reminds me of, the particle or wave a little bit, and we've talked about this, the act of observation changing something. And it also speaks to, in a way, potentially, maybe I'm just kind of spitballing here, how something is so layered. Something can appear to be something, but it is actually filled with a lot of information that you're not aware of maybe in the moment. And that's with not being able to fully understand everything that comes through Prism in the moment, listening to it with your ears, going back in a second way and reviewing the footage and putting together stuff. And then the third new way now, potentially, and that's not even counting other people listening to it for the first time who weren't there, which is another wave or another, layer. But now we've got direct recording of Prism internally. So the feed is coming to a recording device that is not picking up outside noise or the room note or conversations we're having. So directly into the recorder from essentially inside Prism. So it's like almost like Prism's mind is being recorded and its words are being recorded separately.
You make it sound so weird, man. you, yeah, you're right. Because to me, in my mind, Joshua Sean is probably the foremost researcher, developer, mastermind right now behind real time, direct voice communication. And so, in Joshua's world, that is, he's trying to create these environments where you can have interactive dialogue right there in the moment, and clear responses for communication purposes. And he even said, especially after this viewpoint video dropped, he never really thought about the audio review portion being a part of Prism. Because if you've ever tuned into like his shows, he just does it live. He does it live. He gets on and just goes. And there's, I'm sure he probably documents his sessions. And I mean, they are documented on like YouTube and so forth. But as far as like for a research or an investigative purpose for Josh to, later hear me come back and say, this is the additional communication that I recovered. Is my camera still doing something weird?
Yeah, it's kind of
Basement.
subtly coming in. And do I have like something on my, hey, what is this AI companion thing? Yeah. You were like, you were kind of like, okay, yeah, sorry. You know what? Let's take a quick break and we're gonna come back, and
Okay.
I want to pick up where we're leaving off here with how Joshua Sean, I guess, never really anticipated or wasn't thinking about the audio review portion of,
Uh-huh.
with his style, the way he
Right.
does things anyway. And we're going to be right back. And just as a reminder, patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3 a month gets you no commercials on any episode. $1 a month gets you maybe a couple, and even the free patrons. I'm going to put, probably this one will probably go up free without commercials. Or one of the ones that I put up this week will. So you can be a free patron. And there's still stuff over there for you as well. Come join us. We'd love to have you. We'll be right back with Matthew Jackson. Okay, we're back. And okay, I almost feel like I'm kind of, having a hallucinogenic event over here. But
Yeah, I mean, I ate the shrooms. I don't know why it's
it's
affecting
happening
your.
now. It's now,
Is
it
it
just
really?
started. Yes. Anyway, you don't have
Jimmy,
to
make
do it. Don't
sure.
don't yeah, just make sure so I'm not losing my mind. And people listening are like, we don't care because we can't see any of this. And I understand that
Yeah.
100%. But by the end of this hour conversation, I will have been like, I would just have been shaken loose. My brain will be a puzzle spread on the floor if I don't it's happening again. It's still happening.
It's still happening.
Okay, I'm just gonna have to accept this new reality. So anyway, I'm curious if you know what Joshua Sean thinks about, if you've had these conversations. And now that I'm back on the West Coast, I need to just kind of get over there, or get together with them and see if we can't pot it up again. But the you know about that element, and if it changes things, like will Prism behave differently if it understands that it will later be observed, like post live event?
I mean, the potential's there because what we found with. I mean, that even happens with EVP. I mean, sometimes you will, hear something in the moment, or you'll hear something on your recorder, and later you'll go back and check it, and sometimes it's gone. Sometimes you hear it differently. Sometimes you'll get two separate EVPs at the same moment on separate recorders. So the potential, since we don't really understand how, Prism may behave, or the potential of the phenomenon, how it can affect things, we really don't know. But what I seem to experience with this viewpoint investigation, and I'm not for sure yet if this is just a one-off thing that happened, or if this is just the way it's going to be. But what I recorded in the room, in the space during the session, that the microphone was recording Prism and our voices. Later, when I go back and I review the audio of Prism that was recorded direct, which excluded all the environmental sounds and conversations and questions, the audio files just did not seem to link up and match. So that was the crazy thing for me personally, to not only do I have like more sets of data to analyze, but the conversation that got recorded direct seemed to be more like behind the scenes, behind the curtains, and observations from about 3 to 4 different entities, for lack of a better words, basically talking about what they were seeing and possibly orchestrating for our experience in investigating a paranormal location. And as crazy as that sounds, that seems to be what happened. And that's not anything that I shared with the general public, because that would have been just too much to throw at them, for one. And it's something that I still have a lot of audio to review from that and try to make sense of, what exactly I'm listening to direct from Prism, as opposed to just the Prism session that we all experienced in the space in the real time.
Yeah, and I swear this is going to be my last question about your video. But
I'm trying to hold real still.
oh, wait, is the laptop on your lap?
No, no, it's on a computer or
Oh, it's on a desk.
on a stack, yeah, on a desk, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it might be on your legs, and like that's
No,
what I was going to actually ask. You don't have to worry about staying still. It is constantly like moving in and out and in and out. I'm probably going to not do video because it might make. I wonder if it would like actually make if it's going to make me motion sick. I do get because I get motion sick. Anyway, uh, what I want to talk about regarding what you just said is there's a lot to unpack there, right? And trying to understand, first of all, how Prism works, which is not something we're going to get into today, other than just the general concept of creating a link of communication between us and something else that we can't, at least at this time, see in front of us or around us or within us or whatever, right? When in the whole within us word, I've never even considered until now if Prism is actually just tapping into our own intuition and psychic. I don't even want to. I can't even think about that right now. That's just something
yeah.
that just popped up in my brain. But is the idea here that this real time direct voice communication that's happening in the moment, and it just keeps getting better and better with Prism.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had to give a guess, how long has the development of this been going on? The actual device, we're actually using the device.
I think we started experimenting with prototypes probably, well, my first big Prism response I sent to you, and that was it was during the college basketball season, when I sent you the response about Kansas, when we were talking about the IU Kansas game, and it blurted out Kansas was going to win the game to me. So it had to have been like last fall. So for about a year, but it really wasn't until like before the Haunted America conference to where Josh really felt like, okay, we're beyond the prototype stage. This is the first incarnation of Prism. And we really haven't tuned it or altered it much since, even though we're getting ready to do a few tweaks. But it seems like, the others, for lack of better terms, are getting better at using it, because it's getting crazier and crazier. I mean, you heard like in the video the full sentence replies, and now they're asking us questions, which to me is just like, this is like next level. So
Yeah, and I think both of us suspect that they're, even at times we're picking up conversation between two separate others, as you're calling them,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
happening in real time. And the grunt work, so to speak, is the reviewing of footage and the reviewing of audio, and it's difficult and it's time consuming. And you actually sent me a message today that thinking about, especially specifically as it regards to our ongoing Florida investigation, because we've used Prism there twice now. And there's so much footage to go over. And are we going to be wanting to murder ourselves by not thoroughly going through all of that footage, each time we go back? And I do believe that there is obvious benefit to going over footage and before the next trip. And that's
Mm-hmm.
actually something that is very high on my agenda right now, of making sure I get done here in the next, well, gosh, and I cannot believe it's like 10 days away, which is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
Which actually kind of just gave me a panic attack just now thinking about everything I need to get done beforehand. But the ongoing conversation picks up, or, I mean, in your experience with like ITC and direct voice, is there a huge gap, and is it possible to pick up a conversation from 3 months ago? Because I think we've tried to do that with, the bridge investigation and, things like that. But what would you qualify the success probability of something like that?
I don't think once you've made contact and you've established contact, I don't think you're forgotten. And they always talk about how on the other side, time is not linear and all that. I mean, I've even heard of experiences where people may have spoken to themselves as future spirits. So, the potential is definitely there. I don't think that Florida has forgotten us. I think every time that we go anywhere, we've built like a contact field or a network. I think it's even possible to tap in. I could probably even do a session here tonight and focus on Florida. And I could probably get some sort of relevant replies that would directly relate to our investigation. So, if you think about if voices exist through frequencies and vibration and EMF and so forth, I mean, that's a global thing. That's all over the world. And through that network, I don't know if your location matters as much. So I think it's all around us and it's available at all times. So I definitely think that we can continue the conversation. We just haven't had the opportunity to listen to everything that they may have told us. There might be some real gems there that we need to uncover.
Yeah, and I mean, it's super exciting to think about that, and it's also extremely daunting.
Yeah.
We have to take a quick pause here. We're going to be right back. We're talking about PRISM. We're talking about direct voice. We're talking about instrumental transcommunication. We're talking about ongoing conversations with others, whether it be interdimensionals, aliens, ghosts, etc., or something we just don't even have a definition for yet. So you don't want to, you don't want to miss that. So we're going to be right back after this short break. Okay, boom, we're back. I'm actually don't take offense at this, Matthew. I'm gonna click something here. I have to stop your video for a second. Can you can still hear me, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I am sorry. It has nothing to. I mean, you're a very handsome man, but I am.
I know.
I actually think I'm getting motion sick over here. It is. It is. It is mind-boggling to me what's happening, and I can't believe it's not happening on your end. It is a nonstop, constant in out, in out, in out, slightly to the left, slightly to the right. Sorry, I have to catch my breath over here. Like I notice, I'm like, oh, do I need to take some Dramamine? But because I do get very motion sick in cars and planes and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, okay, so okay, I'm already starting to like recalibrate and feel a little bit better. So the ongoing conversation between others and establishing communication once, and then, being quote unquote remembered by some kind of phenomena or high strangeness, to me is fascinating. There seems to be this, once you pop open the top, there's no closing the lid back, right? Or, but and I don't think a lot of people, maybe we don't think about that necessarily when we first get into this. And with the future of PRISM trending in the direction that it's going, it feels like, I mean, is this crazy to think that at some point everyone will have a PRISM device in their home, just like they had telephones?
Prism might be the next Siri, the next Alexis. I really don't know. I mean, I think if things go the way that Joshua really foresees things going. He wants to be able to get, more prisms out there for people to use. So, but it's just a slow process and trying to figure out how to put Prism into one unit right now would be a stretch, but he thinks it will get there.
I mean, I hope that I can put my name on the waiting list. And I know everybody who's even been around it would desperately would want to be on that list as well, as having their own Prism device. But I mean, I would get on QVC and pitch the Prism. That's how much I love this thing. And that's how like bonkers I think this is. And there, I mean, just from understanding that, there seems to be something different happening in the
Mhm.
way that it operates. And you and I talk about this a lot, but in the big picture of things, it's hard to stop and think about truly what it all really means and
Mhm.
what it is actually doing in a way. I mean, because first of all, we don't fully understand it, who the others are.
Mhm.
But these messages, do you want to speak on, without giving away too much of the thing? There was also a message given in a haunting viewpoint. There was also kind of a like an overall general message that was received toward the end of the recording that kind of goes in line with some of the other things Prism has said to us. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the final message at the end of the video, that was actually a clip taken from the little bit of the audio that I had been able to review that was recorded direct. So that clip was not recorded in the room with a microphone. That was part of the direct recording, straight Prism. And it started, and it really kind of talked about, some of the things that we were reiterating in our session, talking about, being respectful and so forth. And this message came through saying that it was at peace. Is this the audio you're speaking of, or my, or you want to talk about a different clip?
Well, I mean, I think this is also very fascinating stuff, but
Okay.
the and it mirrors it in a way. But
Uh-huh.
basically, there was kind of one sentence, or basically one or two sentences that God, I can't remember exactly what it says, and I hate to misquote Prism, but the something about bringing back hope, and
Right.
specifically, there's there's not a, I mean, once you actually get into it feels weird. Am I wrong in saying that once Prism warms up, after when a conversation is started, sometimes at least it can come off little grumpy at first?
Well, it has, but I tell you, with really with this session that we did in the viewpoint, it never really was super gruff. There wasn't those, because we've seen personality changes in Prism depending on where we're at on the Florida location, or who might be with us. And when you're in a room with Beth Stroh, and you've met her, you see how sweet she is and how kind she is, and just what a light she is as a person. And even the owner of the building, she was just so much about the love and respect of the history and love for the building. Prism seemed to reflect those same type of thoughts and sentiments, and so there wasn't anything really dark and gruff that came through strong through Prism. I mean, it was a big old sweetheart. Even the stuff that I kind of seemingly recorded behind the scenes, there was really nothing there that I've heard thus far that I would have taken as like, oh, that's kind of ominous or threatening or anything like that. So it really was. It's a kind of a beautiful piece altogether, in the way it really can gel with not only the people who are part of that space now, but also the family who had lived there in the past. And Prism seemed to deliver that throughout the whole thing. So
Yeah, and it is. I mean, there's a couple themes that run throughout it that are really nice.
Yeah.
And as I jog my memory a little bit and make laps around these memories of mine from watching the video, it occurs to me, I think, some of the more little grumpy parts were kind of EVP stuff from downstairs
Yes.
before you even got upstairs. So yeah, I was mistaken on the prism aspect of that. The Because, well, I want God, and I haven't had time to deep dive into this. And but before we get into that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the seven. Or a little bit later, I want to get into the seven a little bit, just because it's kind of a setup for some listeners for some stuff I want to do later. That I won't need to harass you to get on the mic for, but I'm curious about when it comes. We've talked about the future, the direction of Prism, and it like, how often would you say you're firing up the device?
Not very often,
So maybe
honestly.
once
Yeah,
every 2 weeks, maybe.
probably. Yeah. Because if I fire it up, I want to record it, and if I record it, I want to review it, and I can't keep up with myself at
Yeah,
this
yeah, and
point.
then you're stuck now, and you'll never leave the house, and your family will dissolve, and you'll be left alone, and then Singer moves in, and
Yeah,
neither one of
yeah,
us
yeah,
leave, and we eat peanut butter M&Ms all day and drink Diet Mountain Dew, and just be like, "Did you hear that one?" And that's just our lives, and we lose our teeth. So um, nobody wants that. I mean, I
maybe.
kind of want it, but like, no, not just kidding. Well, what blows my mind here is it's the revelation of the direct recording, and how would we even classify this aspect of like ITC in general when there is something separate coming from the device that is recorded internally?
Yeah, that's a great question because, man, there's really, it almost seems like, I have to feel that whatever is behind ITC is smarter than us. And so I cannot imagine, for 1 second there's something that we're doing on our end that's getting the upper hand, or being able to be intrusive, or peel back the curtain and see or hear or observe what they're doing on their end. I don't think that technologically that we are there yet. So I feel that if we are getting those inside looks and inside peeks, for some reason they're allowing that to be recorded. They're allowing that to be observed, and the purpose of why they would must be because they want us to. And I don't know if that's just to kind of give us a little bit more of a foundation to build upon on what their dimension or their time space or their involvement really is, because we're like operators here, and we're needing their help to be able to communicate because we can't hear them typically, we can't see them most of the time. And for them, if they wanted it all to be hidden from us, I think they could, but for some reason they want us to be able to reach them, and they want to be able to give us messages. And I think if they wanted to keep it from us, they wouldn't have to speak in some language that we would understand or whatever. So to be able to not only be able to communicate with them in real time, but to also get these like sneak peeks, these bits of audio that makes you know that something else is going on. It's like, are you just trying to confuse us, or why you speak in English? There's so many different ways that they could be communicating. And so, like, of course, the Palladians, they speak, with a Brooklyn accent. They're
Yeah, yeah.
they're there, and so I don't think it's a mistake, first off, that we're able to observe and record this. But I think as we're getting better, our access and their access to us has improved. And therefore, I think they're slowly giving us more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense that they're not maybe they didn't want to overwhelm us at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And so the more you realize, the more then they move on to it's, teaching a kid to read. You don't move on to, the complicated 4 or 5 syllable words before they understand how to, pronounce the letters in the alphabet, or understand the alphabet. And we're probably
Yeah.
still learning the alphabet at this point. It feels like.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it, actually. So I think as things keep developing on our end, I think our relationship and our connectiveness with them has the ability to keep expanding. So
Hmm.
I think these are exciting times with ITC, because for a long time things seem to be very stagnant, but there seems to be all of a sudden this reemergence of their willingness to communicate with us and I don't know what's bringing that about. So
It's exciting, and it's we're going to talk more about that lull that you're talking about, and the possible reemergence of something that might have a hand in this as well.
mm-hmm.
That's outside of ourselves, obviously. We're going to be right back with Matthew Jackson. We're talking about ITC. We're talking about direct voice. We're talking about communicating with the other side, or with the other thing, the others in general, and where we are in that journey and what it means for us, especially when you consider and contemplate all the other things that are happening simultaneously on the outside world, the unfolding of disclosure, the awakening and the awareness, and just more people being open-minded to the idea that human beings are not by themselves here in this existence, whatever that means. We're going to be right back. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer. Go get some no commercial life in your life for $3 a month. We'll be right back. Okay, we have returned, and for patrons, we never really went anywhere. Other you just kind of maybe saw or heard us just kind of breathing into the microphone. The For a few seconds, I'm fascinated by this idea that there could be some kind of reconnection in the ITC world. And then, to be very clear, I don't think that it's been complete radio silence and that people have not been able to get any EVPs or communication through ITC devices, etc. in over these last handful of years. Because I think, obviously, just from footage that I've watched that you have put out over time on Paraholics and Obscuravox and some of the other work you're doing, along with a lot of people I don't know, as well as with some I do, there's obviously communication happening. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, a group or an organization or a collective, an entity that refers to itself as the Seven in regards to the history of ITC. Can you give us just, a brief overview of what I'm referencing here?
Sure, and I'll probably butcher it, but from my understanding, from my understanding, and a lot of this comes from ITC researcher that went by the name, and he also might be a medium too, if I'm not mistaken. But his name was Mark Macy, and a lot of his work is still out there online for people to read. And our old buddy Gene Caswell, he's the first person to actually turn me onto this a few years ago. And it primarily came up because of the ITC responses I was getting, and also April Slaughter was getting, of something or someone identifying themselves as Seven. And I kept bringing this up to Gene, and he's like, I wonder if this has to do with the Seven. And so after a couple deep dives, at one point there was more of a concerted, maybe global effort, at least maybe in Europe, of the ITC experimenters. Basically, they viewed themselves as ITC like operators, and there were these like technicians, or as like some people might refer in like the spirit medium world as like spirit guides, but these technicians on the other side that were assisting with the communication with for ITC specifically. and they were called technicians, but they collectively identified themselves as the seven. And as things progressed and people were doing the work, uh, from my understanding, like human egos and infighting and disagreements, things started to fall apart on the operator side, aka the human side. And at some point, Seven basically announced that they were pulling back. And to my knowledge, there has never really been a reemergence of the seven. But it kind of makes me wonder now, with various experiences that I've had, that you've had, and various people around the world, and the progress that seems to be being made right now with the development of, because things are kind of stagnant on the development side of ITC for a while, but all of a sudden there's like this explosion of things happening. And it makes me wonder now if things are starting to open up again and there's more of a willingness for them to come back to us and help us on their end of things. So that's everything I kind of know in a nutshell.
Well, I mean,
Which is fascinating.
first of all, it's extremely fascinating to think that there's a group, a collective, whatever, on the other side or wherever it is that they're residing in this universe somehow, that are specifically interested in helping the connections or the passing along of information. Now, to get to actively get involved, ITC becomes a thing, gets invented at some point, right? At least on a large scale, where it kind of coalesces together from different people around the world, probably attempting to contact spirit and other things in a mechanical way for probably ever since human beings could ever manipulate the material world in any way, right? So whether it's like, tea leaves in a cup, or, rubbing, doing something with sticks, throwing stones, etc. Right. We get electricity and electronics, and then obviously we start using that. Now, so we're creating jobs on the other side, essentially, right? Where like now these things, or wherever they are, then now they're like, oh, I guess we better fill some, we got some, I can just see the job listing on, like,
And it's union. I mean, it's got to be.
Yeah, has the ability to communicate with human beings through their instrumental transcommunication attempts. Doesn't need to not have a temper. Can
Yeah.
no language requirements. No, so that's happening, and then the seven show up and kind of, I guess, corral and try to organize what's happening, and then human beings screw it up, as we are want to do,
Mm-hmm.
through ego and all that other stuff. And then for whatever reason, like you said, potentially there's some kind of reemergence and reawakening of this, or reconnection. And
Mm-hmm.
and to be clear, I don't think we're the ones over here who have instigated a reconnection, right? Like, we're not the ones who have been chosen by the seven to, I just watched Transformers like a week and a half ago, that new movie, which is very good. So it's not like, we're the, you know, children of Earth, like Matthew Jackson and Ryan Singer and friends have been chosen to, it's like, that's not what this is about. Obviously, if it's happening to us, it's happening to lots of people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you wonder what it is, what's happening. Now,
I
granted,
tell you what.
I don't think everybody's their assistance, if they have come back to the party, have come back to the table. Obviously, there's people that probably aren't going to get communicated with, depending on how they go about things necessarily. Like, like hardcore provokers and things like that. Like, are the seven going to bother talking to them?
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say. I don't know if it's so much um, they've always been there, but I think there's some truth to maybe our intentions and our frequencies being raised higher versus, I mean, ITC and EVP has been there for years. People have been communicating there for years. You know, some of the stuff I've captured over the past, you know, however many years has just been amazing. But I think now we're reaching our abilities to where we're actually focused on higher frequencies. And I do mean higher level frequencies, which I think the higher the frequency, possibly the higher echelon of other you may reach. So if you're down in the trenches and you're dealing with frequencies that are lower and slower in nature, possibly that's when you're dealing with more of, you know, not to be disrespectful to ghosts, but more of the earthbound muck that's here with us. But when you start developing and raising your own personal vibrations and your own self-development, and even the instruments that you're using have a better and higher ability to reach higher frequencies, that also may be assisting in reaching a higher level or higher frequency of being, if that doesn't sound too crazy. But I do think that not only our intentions matter, but the frequencies that we're using and implementing in ITC matters.
I mean, that makes sense to me. In the same way that it makes sense to me that you can't pick up an old landline telephone and expect to transmit a signal or to get talked to, like if you're trying to communicate with a satellite,
Right.
Just in a very basic way, like that landline isn't built for, isn't capable of communication with that satellite. You need a satellite phone to do that,
Yeah.
or to,
Yeah.
to bounce off, to talk to another satellite phone. So that makes sense. And it's not necessarily a thing about being better or worse necessarily, but when intention comes into play, and I think you and I are on the same page with a lot of people on this, intention is it's 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 most of it probably for me when it comes to success rate.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you trying to do here? And
Yeah.
if when you come in with a certain intention of just trying to get whatever you can to
Mm-hmm.
stir things up, to uh expose some spirits or some muck and some or whatever, you're going to get these lower vibration entities for whatever reason that are just like, they just, because how, to me it's the exact same thing as people who know better, but they can't help but engage in the comment wars on Facebook or social media.
Yeah.
When a
Yeah.
troll trolls them, they can't walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So to me, some of us as investigators, every once in a while, we're going in there and we're trolling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and I'm not going to act like I've never been like sucked into a situation where I'm trying to troll something at a location before, you know what I mean?
Right.
But, and
But
the
that may
higher
have been the narrative.
vibrations. Yeah.
That
Yeah,
may have been the narrative of that location too.
exactly. And so, not all the higher vibrations are going to be able to walk away from such an attempt, right?
Right. Well, and for years on my Paraholics channel and videos and so forth, my blog, I'd always write about the frequency of our intentions, add to the success rate for spirit communication. And the more I've leaned into this, I'm also starting to think it's not only that, but it's also the frequency of our frequencies that matter with the communication as well. And you think about our various chakras and how they line up, which is very reminiscent to the way that PRISM is being set up with lower or slower to faster frequencies as well. So we start mixing the science into like some of the woo and the woo into the science, how there's the strange alignment that I don't feel is a mistake that is showing itself through PRISM and ITC currently. So I really do think that I think we're really making some historic significant discoveries as we're moving forward. And it's just the beginning. So who knows what we'll be talking about a year from now? I know we'll be in a flying car, so you'll have to take your Dramamine. But beyond that, though, with as far as like ITC goes, I mean, I really think that we're a part of something very, very significant. And it's just not us. There's other operators around the world that are doing amazing work as well, and even here in the United States. And so this is a movement, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I'm not going to bite on you trolling me about my motion sickness, but
No problem.
I'm gonna raise my vibration, my frequency to go above it. But no, you're right. I'll have to have like just a direct line IV of Dramamine when we're flying in our cars. The it's interesting because you talk about the frequency of intention and contributing to the success rate, and what you're doing here in your work in the past and what and the work that you've been doing with PRISM. And then there's people like myself and some of the others that we go down to Florida that we get to reap the benefits of all the work that you and Joshua Sean have been doing. So it's a real catbird seat situation for a few of us that kind of just really lucked out. But what you're doing is you're compiling evidence and or proof of that sentiment and correlating it with the frequency of the devices as well to try to catch up with and maybe match the frequency of intention that has been there the whole time. So it's a question of science finally catching up to the woo and the spiritual in regards to the work in this field. Is that a good way of encapsulating kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, because you think about, I mean, this is a little bit insider information without giving away too much. My first experience with the early prototype of PRISM down in Florida, what did we mainly get answers about from a ghost supposedly on the property? And at that point, early on with PRISM, we were mainly dealing with slower, lower frequencies. And as PRISM is growing and more frequencies are getting measured and calibrated for the device, we're slowly bringing in higher and higher frequencies. And I think that's is showing up in the evidence that we're collecting too, because the concepts and ideas behind whatever it is we're communicating with keep getting bigger and broader versus just, localized to like the stuff dealing with like the person who originally showed up to investigate Sasquatch on the property. We did kind of dealt with that specifically, and things are just kind of growing from there. And I'm finding that as PRISM develops, I mean, things are evolving and expanding. And to your point about, you guys being witness to this, now that I've had a full on public presentation, but just the general public, people that are just, they're in spooky season, they're wanting to, get a good ghost story. And for me to bring a video and show it to the general public and to get the responses and the questions that I got from just these casual people who are not into paranormal, they were blown away once they realized, oh, there's no microphone on this device. Oh, there's no internet. There's no radio. There's none of those things. The impact that it made on people in the room, I mean, you could see that the implications of what this might imply really kind of rocked them back on their heels, and they were completely fascinated. So that was just more encouragement for me. Like, this can make a bigger impact outside of just our circles, because people were, I mean, they were shocked and had so many questions. It was a lot of fun for me to get that real time reaction from the living.
That's awesome. I'm going to tell you exactly why I love that so much as soon as we take our last little break here. This is the last little break. Hit that fast forward button, but don't go too far because there's not going to be a ton of commercials there. But this is the last break. We're going to be right back. We're going to wrap this up with my friend and yours, Matthew Jackson. We're talking about ITC. We're talking about the implications of devices becoming even more specific and successful in establishing communication that even casual observers of spooky season or that kind of thing can understand and be really blown away by. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're back, and I got Matthew Jackson here. I'm going to tell you exactly why I love what you just told me about these casual observers during a public presentation of the PRISM device and all the questions that they have, and you could see them get rocked back on their heels a little bit. I love this so much because questions mean interest. And when people are asking questions, and it's going to always be the same questions, right? I think you're probably finding that out, that whenever Prism is going to be presented and displayed, and you're going to give demonstrations of it or do sessions with it, especially with the general public, you're going to get probably the same 15 questions right away all the time about where are these voices coming from, where the sound's coming from. There's no microphone, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no word bank, there's no radio stations. Oh my God, or what does this mean? Blah, 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 blah. The more questions, the better, because that means the more interest there is and the more, I guess, I don't know, understanding of like, holy smokes, this is something that's communicating with something. And listen, we've got questions. And I've been around Prism a bunch of times now. You've still got questions. Joshua Jean still has questions as the creator and the the calibrator of the device. So I love that there are so many questions, and that shows me where this is headed.
Yeah, because just the town that I presented that in. I mean, this is not like some, lightweight, average Midwestern city. The city I'm in is the world headquarters of Cummins Diesel Engine Company and the Cummins, generators and so forth. It is a town full of engineers. And if throw a rock in any direction in Columbus, Indiana, there's a chance you're going to hit 50 engineers in the head. I mean, they're just everywhere. And so it's not like, I was in some tavern, everyone rode in on a snowmobile and walked in or got off their tractor and, had no, interest in this. I mean, these were people that were like super curious and had like great questions, so these are like very like people that are very analytical in the way that they think. And when I immediately kind of dispel a lot of the reasons why they might be hearing these voices come through, I mean, you could tell they were just like baffled and kind of excited. So it was a cool experience. So it was neat to do that in front of a non-paranormal audience and get that kind of reaction, because we saw the reaction that we got at in Alton in the Oddities Museum, but for it to happen the way that it happened and to get the quality of responses that were just undeniable. I couldn't explain them all, but they were so clear and so articulate, full phrases, like the one thing where it said that there were 15 ghosts in the basement. That was such a weird, crazy response. I can't make sense of that, but that's what it said. Or the other thing was when I asked, where do you like to be in the building? And it says, thank you for asking. And It says downstairs. What? That's crazy, and, but
like, yeah, you contacted the ghost of Miss Manners. It was really funny.
Yeah. And it's like, we're not trying to, get demons here for clicks. I mean, this is a real earnest effort to try to understand what's going on, and so it's a sweet story. It's an incredible responses. Prism was awesome. The people involved were awesome. So I was really, really happy it came together the way that it did. And then for it to ask me, what sort of work is this connecting? I mean, that's a great question to ask me. Like, yeah, what is this kind of work? So the curiosity on their end was pretty amazing too. Because if ghosts the concept of a ghost, if that's all real, for you to be in a place seemingly for decades and to never be directly maybe addressed before, then all of a sudden people are trying to have a full conversation with you. That has to be a little, it catches you off guard a little bit.
Yeah, I really hadn't considered that aspect of it.
Mm.
And it makes sense, but it is the the self-awareness of things happening through Prism to me are one of the most mind-boggling and exciting
Yeah.
and just baffling. Um, it's oh god, it's so great. I mean, because I have a difficult time hearing EVP responses, and some of these really cool devices, I have a hard time when it comes to the whisper words and things like that, right? And I know a lot of people who are on the skeptical side of things, they don't buy into the EVP stuff when it's unless it's like a real clear, almost like a disembodied voice being picked up in the room as opposed to an EVP. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and but with the ITC and specifically with Prism and their sentences happening, it's just like holy. I mean, I almost feel like we're at the advent, at the dawn,
Mm-hmm.
and get the getting while the getting's good, because I don't want to be like, yeah, I'm not trying to be conspiratorial or anything, but I'm like, how long are they going to let us use this thing, man? Before they shut it all down.
Right.
And because it's like once they realize who I am and some of my buddies are, they're going to be like, wait, why are we talking to these guys? Take me to your leader, that kind of vibe. And
Yeah.
the more I read the Skinwalker at the Pentagon series of books, I'm on the second one right now that came out in 2023, and I also got the original Hunt for Skinwalker, which was written by Colm Kelleher and George Knapp, which kind of it's a much older book. I'll get to that later, but you have this gatekeeping information, of phenomena under the guise of national security. And I'm not trying to get on my soapbox here or anything like that, but what a device like Prism is doing is it's removing that aspect, and
Mm-hmm.
it's allowing for the free flowing of information and communication, and you don't have to worry about you know the spooks coming in, and trying to shut you down, or all this other, or like giving you a little bit here, these spies a little bit there, disinformation agents, etc. Although some people might be like, well, you can't be sure that these others that are coming through Prism are even giving you honest information. Where is your
Right.
I mean, I don't know how you do that. How do you fact check information from a place where you're unaware?
Yeah. That's a great question. You can't.
So we could be taken for a ride by the ultimate trickster. Um,
Yeah. That could play into that. So, um, but who knows at what frequency the trickster, uh, um, where he lives, where maybe we can reach beyond the trickster if we keep working at this.
yeah, I like to think that the trickster is probably operating at a very high frequency, just because I've always liked to think that comedians and clowns were also like super smart, right?
You're gonna find
But
out he's the black. he said the color of black sound, brown sound.
yeah, it's like, yeah, it is interesting to think too that, I mean, because honestly, I haven't really given much thought specifically in regards to the investigation that we're using Prism, for in Florida, that there had to be some kind of I don't know, vetting of the sources. And because first of all, like I said, like we don't know how would you even vet them. And but in regards to being at the Mutilation Ranch in Colorado, and through just an ITC app, and the 7 popping up over and over and over again, I'll have to get that clip uploaded so I can send it to you.
Yeah.
So you can hear what I'm talking about. That really sparked my interest, and just how many times the seven came through. It was almost like, okay, we get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I almost
Yeah.
want to be like, I know who you are. Okay, enough,
Right.
enough. But
And that being said, something I wanted to, that I think I said to you, just because we might be using an app or a device that may not be like have the ability to tune into like super high frequencies or light spectrum or what have you, there's no way that we can't set limitations on what a higher being may or may not be able to accomplish. I'm sure if you're using a old, shack hack radio, and if, Jesus Christ himself wanted to drop in and say, "What's up?" I doubt that device could stop that from happening if that was their intention. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm not telling everybody that it is impossible for them to get positive messages from positive beings just because they don't have PRISM. I mean, we cannot say that, but just the amount of information that we're getting, focusing in on higher frequencies, it just seems to be streaming in.
yeah, for sure. And when you said that about Jesus, it made me think about like Jesus, Buddha, and like Muhammad and like those old Bud Light commercials, like what's that?
Hey,
They're like, "Oh, what are they drinking? They're drinking Jesus's blood." And like, "Oh, I thought you turned this to wine. Oh, this is gross." He's like, "Oh, sorry, man, I forgot." Uh, and there's Dracula in the corner, like, "Oh, did I have blood?" Um, okay, someone can meme that. Well, Matt, this has been great. Let's remind everybody where they can find you. I mean, you can find the latest, greatest piece about a haunting viewpoint, which we referenced in this conversation a bunch of times over at paraholics.com. But where else do you
Yep.
want to tell people to come get you or come find you?
Paraholics. Find me on Prism. Uh, Definitely paraholics.com is a great way to find me. Obscuravox.com, and I'm also currently babysitting and curating the ITC specific website known as itcvoices.org. So, and I have coordinating like socials for all those entities. So I am out there.
Awesome. That's been great.
Yeah.
And also, I'm going to throw a couple of extra links into the. I'm probably going to upload some documents over at Patreon just for people listening. But I'm also going to maybe throw in some links here. We didn't really get into it, but for the disclosure project, they've got some archives. They've got a list of like a map of the UFO secret research facility locations. They have the map on the diparchive.com. You can go, you do have to register to be on there, but you can find out. They've got all over the world. It's an ongoing updated project where they are listing all the different facilities and places where secret UFO research has been done. And this is accumulated through whistleblowers and things like that. So, not to mention a bunch of other stuff on that website. If you're interested in disclosure, if you're interested in blowing the gates off of the gatekeeping, Dr. Stephen Greer has been doing a great job of that for years, and we kind of touched on that a little bit in this conversation. And of course, we're going to update you with as much as we can regarding the ongoing Florida investigation. This trip will, in my opinion, be the conclusion of at least what I'm thinking will be the initial documentary. Because we'll have 3 or 4 trips, I think, now in the can.
Yeah.
And then I'll have to go out and get on the road and go do interviews and things like that with the people involved as well later. I don't want to waste time on the property doing that. So that's something we'll be doing later. But just for people listening, yeah, I'll update all this in a third-year bonus that comes out in a couple days after this as well. So, Matt, thanks again. I appreciate you, my friend, and
Hey,
love
same
having you
here,
on the
pal.
show. Love your
I love
insight,
being
love
here.
your perspective. You're making the world, and specifically the ITC and the paranormal world, a much better place by your participation. So we all owe you a debt of gratitude.
Hey,
I appreciate that very much.
I feel the same for you, pal. That's for sure.
And I wouldn't have said it if I didn't think you'd say it back to me, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's kind of Nigel pays me to say things like that. So
No, don't mention Nigel. He's kind of went into a slumber, but no, now he just perked up over there. Oh, I see him looking around the corner. pointing at himself now. Okay, cool. And we'll do this again sometime soon. And I'll be seeing you in like 10 days in
Yeah, I'm
Florida, my
excited.
friend.